Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 620, Wednesday, November 28th, 2018. Thank you so much for tuning in. Of course, it is Wednesday. That's when I take out the trash and have me some chicken. Every Wednesday, I take out the trash and have me some chicken. Tonight will be no different. Well, we have a lot to talk about today, but before I do, let me just briefly tell you something about yesterday's video, which I think was an epic video. Where I talked about how I think that Trump does have a plan. I don't know that I have all the plan, but I think a critical part of the plan is that I believe that he discovered Matthew Whitaker back in the summer of 2016 and said, hey, that's the guy I need in here running point for me to be the tip of the spear to defend my interest and hopefully maybe become my attorney general so that we can prosecute the criminals. And I think I laid out a relatively good argument for that. Now, just so you know, that information is now in my timeline. All those comments made by Whitaker, I've gone back and plugged them into the timeline, which makes things very interesting, particularly when you look at now, you look at the things that Whitaker said in relation or context to the time frame of things that were happening as Whitaker was out there making these comments and as Trump was making the decision that it's time to fight back and I need a real fighter on my side. Sessions is not the guy. He's basically exited stage left. And so anyway, all this is laid out in the timeline. Now, for those of you who are new to my channel and have never looked at the timeline, if you look right below the description box there, you'll see a link for a TowerGate link there for the timeline. If you want to click on that timeline, what the timeline is it's basically all of the actual, just the hard evidence, bits and pieces of information put into a timeline going back to the very beginning. In fact, it actually begins back in 2014 and takes you all the way up to the current day. And I pretty much get it updated within a day or two of whatever events are happening and breaking at the time. Now, the last time I went through the timeline about 3 or 4 months ago, it took me an hour and a half to go through it. It's a lot of information, but it lays out the entire Spygate frame-up from beginning to end, and it's essentially a culmination of all the important information that is in the 620 videos that I've done on this particular topic. So, it takes about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours to read through it all. So it's actually it's pretty hard to do in one sitting unless you got some time on your hands. You almost have to read maybe a half hour a day and stop at some point, come back and read a little more till you finally get through it all. That's how much is there in my timeline, and it's really the Spygate thing pretty much on a pretty much a day-by-day basis as events have unfolded and as we have learned them. So I highly recommend that you look at my timeline if you have not, if you really want to have the whole Spygate story. All the details and all the facts are there. So have a look at that. Now let's get to the information for today. Okay, so everybody's talking about this thing going on with Jerome Corsi and Roger Stone. So the latest that we have here is that Jerome Corsi claims he has a joint defense agreement with President Trump and was provided limited immunity during his testimony to Mueller's grand jury to discuss a cover story he claims that he crafted for Roger Stone. The Daily Caller is reporting that the limited immunity was for testimony he gave about a cover story that he provided to Stone because of a tweet that Roger Stone sent out, which was a tweet that said, which was about how it would soon be time for Podesta's time in the barrel. So Stone sent out this tweet about, obviously Podesta's about to be under the microscope, at which point Mueller wants to know where Stone got this information. Stone needed some cover for that. So Corsi, his friend, who had been doing research on Podesta, on his background and things and such, provided Stone with some information that would help him back up his tweet. Is essentially all that was going on there. But Mueller's trying to turn it into a a huge conspiracy, which they can tie to President Trump. So Stone is now denying this. Corsi says that Mueller has offered him a plea deal to plead guilty to making false statements regarding WikiLeaks. And of course, Corsi is rejecting the deal. So this is all very confusing and convoluted. It's hard to say because you're dealing with two guys, Corsi and Stone, who are, for the most part, self-promoting, sort of. I don't dislike Stone and Corsi. They're just a couple guys trying to make a buck, and they are sensationalists. They are somewhat propagandist. They embellish things because they're trying to get people to watch their videos, buy their T-shirts or their mugs, or buy their books or watch their movies or whatever. So that's one thing going on here. And Roger Stone has known Trump for years, which a lot of people know Donald Trump. He's a very public person, a very engaging person. If you ask, there's probably a million people who can claim that they know Donald Trump. So, it's easy to claim that, well, you know Donald Trump. And he's got, a reasonably decent relationship with Stone. They've known each other for years and that type of thing. So, again, this is not a rip on Stone or Corsi. They're just a couple guys trying to make a buck. But they engaged in some sensationalist behavior, and now they've fallen into Mueller's trap because they were commenting on WikiLeaks, pretending that they had some inside knowledge, which they did not, but they were trying to promote themselves, embellish what they knew, and in fact have now found themselves in the trap for Uncle Bob. Now, Uncle Bob knows these guys are total bullshitters. He knows there's nothing to it. But what he needs is some way to tie these two guys to Trump. So, because he needs his narrative, which if he can't find something solid, concrete, to get Trump with, he needs something to put in his report, if it's ever going to come out, and I'm not so sure it is, but he needs something to put in his report to give the Democrats ammunition so that they can continue the witch hunt just through the Congress. Because remember, the number one purpose of the special counsel, Uncle Bob the Executioner, and the Hillary donor posse, the number one thing that they are doing and have been put in place to do is to shine all the light on Trump and to deflect or keep or provide cover for the real crimes and the real criminals. That's the number one job of Uncle Bob, is to keep all the attention on Trump so that people can't look at the real criminals, at the DOJ, the FBI, the intelligence community, and the Clinton campaign, and Perkins Coie, and Fusion GPS, and Christopher Steele, and all these players. That's what they have to keep away from, because as long as Uncle Bob keeps his witch hunt going, anytime anyone tries to get documents, like members of Congress or Judicial Watch or anyone else, they can say, hey, you can't see this because it's secret, because it's part of Uncle Bob's ongoing investigation. As long as Uncle Bob has his investigation going, the evidence is being protected. Uncle Bob was brought in to essentially protect the evidence. He is the shield to protect the evidence and cover for the real crimes. And the idea is to keep that going and at the same time throw enough stuff at Trump that they can either catch him, either force someone to make up a story about Trump, which they can use to impeach him or file charges against him or what have you, even though it's hard to file charge against the president. In fact, I don't think you really can. Impeachment is how you get rid of the president. So Uncle Bob's job is to try to get impeachment, and if he can't get impeachment, to destroy Trump and make sure he's a one-term president who's handcuffed the entire time. At which point, once he's gone, they're good to go. It'll go away. No one will ever be able to get back into it. So this is primarily what's going on. And a lot of people keep saying, yeah, well, looks like the Mueller probe is just about wrapped up. And as I keep saying, really? He's just about ready to wrap it up? Oh, really? Huh. I don't believe it. I'll believe it when I see it. I believe he's got to keep it going forever. And when he finally runs out of things and maybe is forced to throw in the towel, he has to at least produce a report that he can give to the Democrats in the House that they can use to continue. So this is what all is going on. Now, as I said, I disagreed with Trump answering these questions, because what were the questions about? Questions about him having any knowledge of any thing going on with Russia, WikiLeaks, the emails, and all this kind of stuff. That's mainly what the questions were to Trump. And so, after Trump answers the questions, if that was really the last thing Uncle Bob needed to wrap up his report, then why is it that Trump answers the questions and the very next thing you see is Uncle Bob launching a full attack on Corsi and Stone? Two guys who talked a lot about the WikiLeaks emails and pretended that they had inside information. And we know that Stone is very connected and had phone conversations with Trump during the campaign. They're still trying to lean on Manafort to get him to say that he met with Julian Assange, which both he and Assange completely deny. I don't think Manafort would meet with Julian Assange. I mean, they're in different worlds. I mean, they don't even, it's just crazy. But it doesn't look like to me that Mueller is getting ready to wrap up his investigation. And as I've said from the very beginning, the huge mistake that was made by Trump's attorneys from the very beginning was to ever even give Uncle Bob's witch hunt any legitimacy at all. From day one, they should have came out. Trump's lawyers should have stepped up to the microphone and said, "Look, we're not commenting on anything or cooperating on anything with Uncle Bob, the executioner, and his witch hunt." Because what's really going on here is that a whole lot of people involved in the DOJ and the FBI attempted to destroy Trump as a candidate. And then when he won the presidency, they had to come up with an insurance policy to try to take him out, to cover up the crimes that they committed in trying to take him out as a candidate. Uncle Bob's job here is to try to continue the destruction of Trump, try to get him impeached, and cover up the crimes that were committed by the DOJ, the FBI, and all their friends, including the rotten Reverend Clinton and foreign governments, the intelligence community, Mr. Potato Head, and the whole nine yards. And from day one, they should have challenged Uncle Bob, his investigation, and they should have said exactly what the real truth was of what really happened from day one. And, as I've said many times, shortly after that, if that didn't drive Uncle Bob out of town, what the president should have done was appointed a presidential commission, and he could have put good people on that commission, people just as loyal to him as the people who are on Uncle Bob's team who are loyal to Hillary. Trump could have set up a presidential commission, assigned them a group of attorneys and investigators to work with them, made sure that they could see any documents, give them full subpoena power for documents and witnesses. He could have put Joe DeGeneva on that team. He could have put Jonathan Turley on that team. He could have put Dershowitz. He could have selected maybe a handful of just citizens. He could have put together a 12-person panel commission to look into the crimes of the deep state. And he could have ran that parallel side by side with Uncle Bob's investigation this entire time. And it would have gotten full, because these presidential commissions are things that are done in public. They're covered on C-SPAN. And these individuals would have conducted their investigation parallel to the Uncle Bob investigation. And would have at least neutered his investigation, at the very least. If not by now, uncovered all the crimes. Huge political fail, huge legal fail in the strategy against Uncle Bob to ever give him legitimacy. Now look what we got, look where we are. Now, Mr. Whitaker, I don't know if you watch YouTube videos. Matthew Whitaker, I'm talking to you. I don't know if you watch YouTube videos. I know the president does. But me, H.A. Goodman, Dan Bongino, various other people have been saying for the past 2 or 3 weeks to listen up very closely, Mr. Whitaker. When the Democrats take over January 3rd, they are going to grab hold of the narrative, along with the rotten Reverend Clinton's friends who have a lot of money and a lot of organizations who act on their behalf. They're going to have the criminal deep staters on the inside. They're going to have the media, and they are going to control the narrative, totally control the narrative. Mr. Whitaker, what you must do before that happens is you must gain control of the narrative. You must establish the narrative, or things are going to get very, very ugly. Mr. Whitaker. The best thing you could do right now, Mr. Whitaker, is indict the rotten Reverend Clinton. You need to land a hard punch. And yes, they're going to go ape shit. Yes, the media is going to go crazy. Yes, they're going to file lawsuits. They're going to do all that anyway, Mr. Whitaker. It's the best play, Mr. Whitaker. What you cannot do any longer is sit back on defense. They will just destroy you. Just like they're doing Trump. And when they're done with him, they'll go after Trump Jr. and anyone else and everyone else. Massive action, offense. You got to go on offense. We've been on defense for far too long. The Mueller witch hunt is not going to end. If that's what you're waiting for, Mr. Whitaker, I don't believe it's going to end. Because what's he doing now? He gets the questions from Trump, and now he's all over Corsi and Stone, trying to get what he can from them to tie them into the Russian narrative with WikiLeaks and emails. And then he can say, well, the association of Corsi and Stone to Trump, and he can show the associations to prevent reasonable suspicion, to present enough question in a juror's mind or in the public's mind that they can say, yeah, well, I guess it could be. You can't let this happen, Mr. Whitaker. You know what's up. You need to indict the rotten Reverend Clinton. And then you need to appoint a special counsel. I don't think you can wait for the IG report. Huckleberry Horowitz is in no hurry. It's time to act swiftly, Mr. Whitaker. Listen to those of us who've been watching this story and following this story for a very long time. Yes, I know all hell will break loose. I know that. But it's going to break loose anyway. And at the end of the day, they're not going to stop until Trump is gone. Let's move on. Turkey is the latest country to tell Soros to pack up his bags and get the hell out and to stop meddling in their affairs. He's becoming very unpopular, and he should be given the same message here. Trump tweeted out today. He's blasting Mueller and his 12 angry Democrats on Twitter, and he's asking again why Mueller hasn't inspected the DNC server. Well, the last time that we were digging into the DNC server has been months and months, but they've lost the chain of custody. So it can no longer be viewed as a piece of evidence in any court proceeding. They lost the chain of custody, and that was no accident. But you could certainly describe, and that's another thing that should have been done from the very beginning when Uncle Bob started his investigation. They should have pointed out that no one's ever looked at the DNC server other than CrowdStrike, a firm paid for by Perkins Coie, working for the rotten Reverend Clinton, not the FBI, not any other organization. CrowdStrike is a very questionable group of folks. What about Seth Rich? Where did the WikiLeaks really come from? Has Uncle Bob sent his team over to the embassy to interview Julian Assange? And what have we learned from Julian Assange? He said it didn't come from the Russians. Where is your evidence, Uncle Bob? Where's your evidence that the Russians hacked the DNC and gave it to WikiLeaks? Where is the evidence? That should have been called into question from day one. They really have none, other than CrowdStrike. And their credibility is zilch. That's another huge mistake they've made. And Trump understands that. That's why in his tweet he's asking, why hasn't Mueller inspected the DNC server? That damn thing they lost the chain of custody, and that thing is wiped clean, brother. Wiped clean. I know there's some people in the Q community that says that certain secret individuals have got that server. Whoop-de-doo. Trump also says, wait until it comes out how horribly and viciously they are treating people. What did he just say? Wait until it comes out how horribly and viciously they are treating people, ruining their lives for them refusing to lie. Trump also says that heroes will come from this, and it won't be Mueller and his 12 angry Democrats. Need to look at the Clinton Foundation and the Justice Department. Keep in mind, he's got Whitaker in there, and he's been in there since September 22nd of 2017. Over a year. probably putting all this together, waiting just for what they believe, I guess, is the right time and the right way to go about doing this. And I'm convinced that they believe it has to happen after Uncle Bob, the executioner, completes his investigation, which is why they've been trying to get it to end. But I don't see it coming to an end. People keep telling me it's coming to an end. I just don't see it. I hope it's true. But if it was coming to an end, then why, after he gets Trump's answers to the questions, which we were told is the last thing he needed to wrap it up, he's all of a sudden back over to Corsi and Stone and pressing them. And he could drag them around for another year. He could keep this thing going on for a year, dragging Corsi and Stone in and out of his hearings in front of his grand juries and playing legal games with them. It's just another way for him to drag it out. Uncle Bob doesn't plan on going anyplace. People better wake up. It's time to drop the hammer, Mr. Whitaker. This game will not end. It's not going to end on its own. You got to end it. And the best way, drop the hammer on the rotten Reverend Clinton and then appoint a special counsel. We have this other report that Manafort met with WikiLeaks, which I talked about just a few minutes ago. Both deny it. It's ridiculous. They're just trying to force Manafort. They're to find out how much pain he can take, how much torture he can take. They want him to agree to one of these narratives that they can use. Trump's the target, and they'll destroy anybody and everybody they have to take down the target. Because if they don't, the target, Trump, is going to take them down. This is life or death. This is for all the marbles, Mr. Whitaker. All the marbles. Everything's on the table. Gotta drop everything you got. Balls to the wall, Mr. Whitaker. Balls to the wall, man. Slick Willie and the Rotten Reverend kicked off their evening with the Clintons tour in Toronto, Ontario, last night. The ticket sales were so bad that they had to go to StubHub and offer those tickets up for just $15. Also, they were available on Ticketmaster. A Canadian woman who attended the event posted a pic of the event showing this room with many, many empty seats, mostly empty seats in the arena. No one cares to hear the rotten Reverend Clinton and the accused rapist, pervert, Slick Willie Jefferson Blythe. No one cares to hear from them anymore. Pretty obvious. Nobody really wants to donate to their foundation either. Now's the time, Mr. Whitaker, to hit him in the underbelly. Hit him in the soft underbelly, Mr. Whitaker. Another caravan is forming in El Salvador, which is now being organized on social media. Well, we also have reports coming out today that many of those people at the border are turning around and heading back to somewhere because they're realizing now that what they were told that they could just storm the border and get in, they're finding out is not true because there's a whole bunch of troops on the other side and Border Patrol making sure they don't. And so many of them are turning around and going back home, getting the message. Trump's done the right thing. He's winning. And he must continue to do this because there'll be more caravans, and that's exactly what he knows. Cindy Hyde-Smith in Mississippi is now up 10 points. I believe the election Tuesday night, the polls closed at like 8 or 8:30 down there in Mississippi. We should know by tomorrow morning. She's up by 10, but we know how these things go, right? Republicans up by 10 on the night of the election. They'll count votes for 3 or 4 days, and the Republican will lose. They stole every damn seat in California. Every one. Even the very last one. Hanging by a thread. The last little piece of red on the California map. Tiny, tiny, tiny little piece. They already took Orange County. That's gone. It's Blue County now. One last little voting district, and they just stole that one too. How about that? The clean sweep in Cali. How many illegals do you think voted in Cali? California. I think Major Mac is right. Build the damn wall on the California border. All the way up and down the California border, and you might as well include Seattle and Washington and Oregon. Sorry, Peter. Our man Peter lives up there. We can't do that. We can't do that. Maybe we can get Peter out of Washington, but maybe he likes Washington. Maybe he doesn't want to leave. Damn, that's a problem. We got some patriots and some freedom fighters there in Washington, California, and Oregon. We certainly want to keep them in our hearts and our thoughts. But goodness gracious, man, you just sometimes you do just want to build a wall. The whole West Coast wall, man, just wall it off. Make it part of Mexico. Who cares? They're headed for bankruptcy anyway. So if Chrissy Hyde-Smith wins that race, the Senate numbers will be 53 Republicans, 47 Democrats. 53-47. The dishonorable J. Edgar Comey was on a Boston radio interview, and he said that Matthew Whitaker is not the sharpest knife in the drawer. Not the sharpest knife in the drawer, according to Comey. Well, Comey, you're not very sharp yourself, brother. And God willing, if Mr. Whitaker acts, you'll be in jail. J. Edgar Comey, where you belong. You lying son of a bitch. Traitor. Here's a question for you. We keep hearing these rumors that there were 5 FISA warrants. Sure. And we're also hearing that they didn't even go to the FISA court on the first one. Heard that from Dave Janda. Nunes is indicating that may be the case as well, but he can't come out and say it because it's classified. We also know that there were national security letters signed, which can be used to launch surveillance without even going to the FISA court, because they can use these national security letters. Thanks to George W. Bush gave us that. That's how they were able to spy on tons of American citizens without even using the FISA court process. Just sign a national security letter. That's supposed to be used for people they believe are involved in terrorism, by the way. But now it's used for anybody who might be the political enemy of a person like the Rotten Reverend or the Deep State. But why did Mueller go after Flynn, Papadopoulos, Manafort, and Stone? Well, he could have gone after a lot of people, but why are they the ones that actually got hooked up with process crimes and charges and sentencing? In the case of Flynn, Papadopoulos, and Manafort. And Stone's probably next. Well, it's probably, my guess is it's probably because they were the other individuals who had FISA warrants on them. They were probably the other 4 people that had FISA warrants on them. And by charging them and getting them to do this, go along with this, I guess Uncle Bob feels that's a way of protecting those crimes of the illegal FISA warrants that were probably taken out on these people. Just another tactic of Uncle Bob the Executioner to try to protect the deep state, because he is the shield for the criminals. So there we have it. How many of you believe Uncle Bob the Executioner is planning on ending his probe anytime soon? My guess is there's quite a few of you who don't believe that. I know I don't. I won't believe it till I see it. We were told, well, this is the end of it. As soon as he gets Trump to answer these questions, that'll wrap it up. Here comes the report, which is still going to be a political report, which is still going to give the ammunition to Democrats to continue the witch hunt. But at least ways, if the Uncle Bob Executioner witch hunt comes to a close, at least ways, maybe Trump feels that at that time that investigation's closed. Now you can launch the Spygate investigation. And he's got his man, his point man, Whitaker, right there to carry that out. Uncle Bob is not stupid enough not to realize this. He's quite aware of when Matthew Whitaker was brought in. He's quite aware of what Matthew Whitaker thinks of him and the investigation. He's quite aware of what Matthew Whitaker is likely to do. So it's not like Uncle Bob's just going to sit back. Remember, Uncle Bob the Executioner and the Hillary donor posse are now part of the criminal conspiracy. They're part of the insurance policy. They're a continuation of the original crime. The original, the frame-up operation was going on yesterday, it's going on today, and it'll be going on tomorrow. It will never end. Unless Trump ends it, which he can't, because if he does, they'll impeach him. You see, Mr. Whitaker, it's quite the trap, and it's been made worse because from the very beginning they allowed this to have credibility. They should have gone after this thing from day one, and from day one Trump should have appointed a presidential commission of people he selects Trump loyalists, just like the Hillary loyalists that are working for Uncle Bob. He should have put a bunch of Trump loyalists. He should have given them all the powers of Uncle Bob with subpoenas, given them attorneys, given them investigators, and ran a parallel operation, and should have never given Uncle Bob the time of day, should never responded to a single question, should never responded to it other than for Trump's lawyer to say, we believe that the Mueller witch hunt is a hoax, it's based on a hoax, it's based on lies, it's a cover-up to try to cover up the crimes they committed in trying to destroy the president when he ran, and then of course once he became president to try to destroy his presidency. That's what the Mueller thing is doing, and we're going to have a presidential commission set up to investigate what actually happened to get the actual truth of what happened in 2016. Thank you very much. No questions. And that's exactly how, if I were Trump's lawyer, I would have handled it from day one. Now, Mr. Whitaker, me and various other YouTubers are telling you, as we've been covering this thing very closely for a long time. I'm not suggesting you're ignorant or anything like that. I think you're counting on certain things to happen that I don't think are going to happen. I think you've got a strategy that may well prove to be a good one. But let's just say that me and a bunch of other people who've been following this for a long time don't have a lot of confidence. You've got to land a throat punch, and you've got to do it soon. You've got to gain control of the narrative. Because if you wait till after the Democrats take over, then anything that you do, they're just going to say, oh, well, that's just them retaliating. That's just them going on full defense because now we're launching these investigations and they're behind the eight ball, and so they're just launching this counterattack. It's just propaganda to try to muddy the water. And they will turn your investigation, Mr. Whitaker, into nothing more than a propaganda ploy and a media ploy and all these sorts of things. They're waiting for that. They expect that. What you must do, Mr. Whitaker, as you probably know, and any soldier, former soldier, any martial artist, any street fighter will tell you, element of surprise, Mr. Whitaker. Element of surprise. You have to have the element of surprise. When they're not expecting it, you hit them. And you hit them hard, and you hit them with a death blow, right in the throat. You knock them silly. You knock them loopy. You stun them. You daze them. You knock them off their game. And then you go in for the kill, Mr. Whitaker. Because this is a death match. This is like blood sport. This is a death match. Uncle Bob ain't going away, Mr. Whitaker. I don't think that report's coming. Huckleberry Horowitz, God knows when his report will come out. Certainly you can declassify the whole 9 yards, but you can do that now, Mr. Whitaker. I'd say the hell with the UK. The hell with the Australians. As far as their government, not the citizens there. Many of them watch this channel. I'm not talking about the people. I'm talking about the government, the corrupt government officials, and those intelligence people, along with Mr. Halper, Down the Hatch Downer, and Mr. Misfit. Declassify everything right now. Everything. That's what I would do, Mr. Whitaker. I would come out and make a statement. I would come out and say, I've been looking at this now for a year since I've been Sessions Chief of Staff. I've discovered a lot of problems. I'm considering appointing a special counsel, but in lieu of that, because there's a lot more things out there, we've looked at a lot of information. It's been looked at by the DOJ, the Inspector General. He's got a lot of this stuff now. He's going to be putting out a report, and he'll be telling us what he thinks about it. But I thought I would just go ahead, and let's just go ahead and get this stuff out there now so we can take a look at it, and then I'm going to go ahead and declassify it all. Everything. Carter Page stuff, Bruce Orr stuff, Gang of Eight stuff, get it all out there. Page and Strzok text, every damn one of them. Get it all, Mr. Whitaker, and then at the end of your press conference say, oh, and by the way, I'm indicting the rotten Reverend Clinton. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow for more TowerGate. See you. Bye.